Welcome to the greatest pod where we discuss and debate what makes something great. I'm Ron Swallow.
I'm Ed Greer.
I'm producer Bill.
Dude, and today we are going to talk about my favorite thing. I'm sorry I jumped the gun, but I'm just so ready to talk about this, Ron. I'm ready to talk about this thing. I hit up Bill at like midnight going like, dude, can we talk about Nobody? Can we please talk about Nobody? So
hey,
I've been
fiending. I don't want to cut you off, but you didn't have to talk me into it because I saw Nobody in theaters. It was my first time back in theaters post-COVID, and I have been dying to talk about this movie ever since I saw it, which was months ago at this point. So I am ready.
Dude, and I'll throw in last things last, that when you said that you went to go see it at the movie theaters, I remember the ew that me and Ron gave you. I remember it very clearly. And now that I know that you were holding this beautiful movie in your heart and you were just wanting to spread it to us and we had rejected you so summarily, I feel the affront right now. That was awful what we did to you, and I'm so sorry. But we're rectifying it today, baby. We're going to be one tribe talking about this kick-ass, dose of masculinity in all these different forms. So, Bill, since you have been harboring it the longest, kick us off, man.
So this was my first time back in theaters, and this, I want to say it was in like February, maybe March. So we still had to be masked up. They were still only selling like a third of the seats in the theater. I mean, this was like right after they opened back up. So I was excited because I had been missing that experience. And I went in anticipating, knowing, number one, that this was written by Derek Kolstad of John Wick fame, and who wrote like the Head and Shoulders 2 best episodes of Falcon and Winter Soldier. But knowing that it was written by Derek Kolstad, and then knowing that I've always liked Bob Odenkirk, I was like, okay, this will probably be good. But I was expecting it to be forgettably good. I was going because I wanted to see something. And I walked out of that movie so hyped. I walked out of that movie not just because the movie itself takes you on a ride, which it does, but you know me, some of the things that screenplay does are so smart. Some of the filmmaking is so like this. If this was handled by a lesser director, this director 100% understood what the screenplay was doing and leaned all the way into it. And I can elaborate on what I mean by that. But I'll just say that, I use this term sometimes. It was a Swiss watch of filmmaking. It was just, there was no fat. There was nothing ancillary. There were no bad decisions. There was nothing rough around the edges. Like, they knew exactly what kind of movie they were trying to make, and they made the hell out of it. And I will always give a round of applause to that. I thought the movie was great. You guys?
At this point, I would like to say the reason we're talking about Nobody is I do believe it is the biggest box office casualty of COVID. We are going to ramble for the rest of this podcast about how dope this movie is. Later, we're going to get into spoilers and stuff and start really dropping some of the exact choices we thought were beautiful and everything. But for now, I'd like to just say, like, it really hurts me on some level to see that this movie, which it has the lineage of John Wick, as we're going to talk about, but it also has the same box office potential, in my personal opinion, especially given the fact that there is a super great actor, not just a great stunt performer and charismatic figure, which Keanu Reeves definitely is, and he's a decent actor. But Bob Odenkirk, I think, is a really great actor with a really good look for this whole thing. And I just think people would have gone to this in droves were it not, poisonous outside. You know what I mean? I really think it would have made more money. It made about 54 mil, and I think it's 154 under ideal circumstances, honestly. Yeah, Ron, you go, because you literally just saw it.
I just saw it literally, 3 hours ago now, or 2.5 hours ago. But mostly I just enjoyed the pacing. And then when it got to the action, it was great. And, we've talked about this before, but I love when comedy in an action movie doesn't feel forced. And none of the comedy feels forced. It all feels natural with the way everything's flowing, except for maybe a couple of things at the end, but mostly super down-to-earth comedy that makes sense in the scenario. So I really enjoyed that. And, just like Ed will tell you, the action is insane.
Well, yeah, I mean the action is really cool, but like also I really felt as though this was one of the first movies that in an economical way showed you what the character's headspace was and then launched them into their adventure. In a super economical way, you got to see that this guy's life is super routine. This guy isn't really connecting with his wife anymore. This guy is a real family man down to the core. He doesn't even drive his car to work. He takes the bus, which is in the modern day America emasculating. You know what I mean? Like almost every part of him has, and the beeping of his Metro card as he takes the bus to work is almost like the beep, beep of your fucking life on a respirator at the pace at which they unfold the stuff. So, like, that was super sick. And I loved how you got to see that this guy feels as though he's dying. Like his unlimited capacity for violence is not being quenched. And it is there. It's there the whole time. He's trying to be good. And that I just love how this is like such a metaphor for so much stuff that dudes are going through when they get into their 40s. You know,
Dude, this is the good version of Fight Club, which is not to say that Fight Club's a bad movie, but in terms of like the morality of the movie, and I want to get into this because I was so impressed by this script and the directing, but it starts with the script. They do such a good job of establishing what the actual conflict is in this movie. And the conflict is not nobody versus the Russian mob. The Russian mob is incidental. The conflict in this movie is about a man who has no future. It's man versus self. It's about a guy who, for whatever reason, and the movie kind of sidesteps this, but kind of doesn't, which again I sort of loved by it. I loved about it. It's a man who took a path early in life that did not set him up for lasting happiness or lasting fulfillment. And I think the movie is unequivocal that like he got to a point where he walked away because he should have, and it was the right thing to do. And this is not, as violent as it is, it's not a bloodthirsty movie. And I think, Ed, you point out, and the movie's very deliberate about it, he is a very legitimate family man. He doesn't feel trapped and held down by his family. He doesn't resent his family. That's not what it's about. And again, a less skilled version of this movie could have made it seem that way. But it's just about a guy who turned himself into a thing that had a shelf life. And then he hit the end of the shelf life, and now he doesn't know what to do with himself. And in that confusion, he loses himself. And so, Ron, you talked about the pacing at the beginning of the movie. Again, it's just so smart. It sets up all these problems for him. He and his wife have this disconnect. He has this disconnect from his children. He gets walked over at work by his in-laws, and the movie doesn't even paint them as being egregiously bad people. It's just, this is a guy who has lost his sense of self. The movie threads the needle where you get that completely without it having to make anything about him cartoonish, any of the antagonistic forces in his life cartoonish. It's just about, I lost the feeling that my life is worthwhile. And he just so happens to get it back through violence. But even the violence, it shows him taking pleasure in the power, but it doesn't fetishize, the brutality. And again, it's a tightrope walk, man. It's like, it's so uplifting to me, like between the writing, the directing, and the acting, God damn, did you guys thread a needle? I don't know. I love seeing that. Just as somebody who appreciates craft, I love seeing that so much.
Yeah, and there were some really subtle, fun lines in there that like imparted information without having to do a bunch of expose. The old show, don't tell thing. Even though it was technically a line, it was like this idiot pulling out a gun and being like, "You got to protect my sister," and then gives him a gun. So now you know that this is his son-in-law or his brother-in-law, and you already know that this guy's a giant douchebag, and you get the feeling that this guy is more than he seems to be. I think at this point they'd already done the little radio thing, didn't they? Or no, that was afterwards. That was like the scene right afterwards. But like I just really enjoyed, and Ariel noticed that as well, like just how cool it was to throw in a little line that gives you all of the information you need to have without having a family thing or a conversation about it or anything like that. Just real simple, real tight, to the point, and then you go, okay, well, this is another family member basically being a douchebag to him. And
Right. They didn't need to contrive like, oh, we're all gonna have a family barbecue just so that I can, show you how everybody relates to each other, which is what it would be like, in a rom-com or what have you. It's like,
yeah,
nope, within the mundanity of just showing you him living the same life every single day and how that eats away at him, they're also giving you exactly all the things you need to understand everything you need to know about the characters. And again, it's just smart, brilliantly crafted screenwriting. It's really good.
Well, and the thing that I grokked to immediately when I saw it, the very first full scene of him, like, just sort of walking around acting and stuff, is the inciting incident of the movie. Everything else was like chopped up and super quick and just like the modernity and hitting you with all this rhythm. And then when they calm down, now it's time for an action scene, basically. And it's just like, I love the rhythms of this movie, and I love when I was talking about the almost the well of violence within the character, it isn't even like, it's like almost like an operating system inside of him, and he doesn't just want to hit, he wants to be hit. I think that's very clear in the first
yeah,
big fight that he gets into. It isn't just about inflicting stuff on people. He wants to hurt too. He wants to feel alive. Because I mean,
Mm.
when it's you versus five dudes and you say, I am going to fuck you up, and you lock yourself in with them on purpose, you're saying something. You're saying, well, for good or ill, I'm alive right now. I might be dead in a minute, but I'm alive right now. And I just love that transition. I also loved how convenient that was. And I'll tell you why. Because
Mhm.
like in another movie, they would have made up some more extra crap. No, life comes at you fast, and life is sometimes random. And a random bump into with some thugs that he could immediately size up and know that he should beat their ass. And you notice in that fight, as deadly as he's doing these guys, he didn't kill anybody. There wasn't. I think like one dude might have died from injuries, but when they go to the hospital later, there's 3 or 4 guys in there that are still alive. You know what I mean? He wasn't really trying to kill everybody. And when he does a tracheotomy on that guy, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
He that shows you that, like, damn, I killed him. Okay, I didn't kill him. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I love little character moments like that.
Again, the movie, it just walks such a tightrope. God, I love it. I'm getting excited just talking about it, because even in the way that lays out, right? Like, he goes and he's ostensibly seeking vengeance because those people broke into his house. But when he realizes their circumstances, he walks away from it. And you right there, you start to understand it's not really about violence. What it's really about is some people need to be put in their goddamn place, and he's
Mm.
able to do it. And when he
Mhm.
doesn't do it, that's when he feels emasculated. And so he goes thinking he's going to do it, and then he realizes, like, these people don't really deserve to be put in their place. And so he walks away because that's the thing to do. And then the movie, again, it's brilliant, just puts him in a place where so many of us have been, where they have already set up that he spends so much of his time, and he runs into the type of people that just about everybody in the audience has ran into in public at some point, and has
Mhm.
Yep.
also had that same thought of, God, I'd just like to punch this asshole's teeth in.
Yep.
And then the movie does the job of justifying that once that's happened, there are consequences for acting that way for
Mhm.
the person, even when you're in the right, like, doesn't shy away from that either.
Well, dude,
And
hold on. To
yeah,
seize on that point, what I love about that is he's causing the motion picture. It isn't some event happened to him. That the break-in is nothing. It's literally nothing to him. He tosses it off as a great opportunity to show how much restraint he has.
Hmm.
That was a Herculean act of restraint that he did earlier. When you know how much skills this guy has, to have 2 people trot over him and his kid, had to be, and that had to hurt his soul. but he knows that if he starts cracking skulls like Bender's dad or whatever, or like, like the principal, it's going to cause trouble. There's going to be questions. There's going to be, so he's just like, nope, I dedicated myself to being a sheep. Bah, get out of my house, instead of I'll kill you. And so when he gets a chance to unleash that torrent and again be hit, I love how many hits he takes in that fight, and I love how it isn't that he's the baddest dude and he's John Wicky and he goes through people. He's just the last man standing. I
Yes.
really love that.
Again, man, just talking craft, the choreography in this movie is so smart because, yes, he is not like a world-class martial artist. He just suffers better than everybody else. And it gives
like
you
Rocky.
the sense. No, but I mean, it gives you the sense. It's like, that's kind of what differentiates a Navy SEAL or a Special Forces guy, right? Like, they break you in training so that you no longer feel death, fear death and injury. And like, again, it creates this world while doing the bare minimum amount of effort in the script of like, oh, I get where this guy's coming from, even though they never tell you, but just the choices that they make. And again, it's like, it's such a well-written goddamn movie.
Yeah. Well, and you were talking about the part where he gets back into the apartment to ostensibly get his watch back and also get the kitty bracelet back, which was hilarious, by the way. And it's not the real reason he went back. We all know that he just needed to do something. But I think that was also a moral decision. It wasn't, and same with sparing them in the in the first place, like not kicking their ass when they first came. Both of those were decisions where like, okay, I can't hurt these people. They're more scared than I'm scared right now. And, and you could tell because he knew that there was no guns in the bullet. Like we no guns in the bullet, no bullets in the gun, all these other things that like, he made the decision, not just because of restraint, but also because it was the right thing to do, because these two idiots were scared out of their mind and desperate, doing something for who knows why, and then eventually find out the why was to have a baby. And if I saw it right, it looked like it had like some kind of problem, like a respirator. Yeah,
it was on like a little respirator.
Respirator. So it's like he made a moral decision again. So so that way he's not just like an insane killer guy. He's a guy who's doing the best, making good decisions from a pretty good heart, even though obviously he kills bad guys.
Well, again, he didn't kill anybody until the fallout happens from his act. And I love the lull between the act and the payoff. And I also love, can I just talk about the villain real quick? The villains in these movies are always some, for lack of a better word, some strong foreign presence is usually the villain in these movies. And in this case, it is Russians. And this particular Russian mobster, Yulian, in this movie, I gotta say, man, Kolstad is really good at introducing these guys as an interesting version of this stock character. You've seen this stock character 5 billion times, and Kolstad goes, okay, let me take a crack at it. And just puts little stuff in there. Like one thing, Yulian in a magnificent Boogie Nights-esque one shot. You're standing on the corner. You see a Range Rover whip by you, and then bust a Yui and cut guys off, and then park wildly. And then a guy gets out, stumbles across the street, starts getting his gate together, walks across the street against traffic, make a car stop for him, goes inside of club, gets a bump of coke from his black Russian friend, come back to that one later, gets on stage and does a song and dances and sings poorly, laughably, in an ugly, stupid fashion. Like nobody that dances like this is hardcore. Nobody that's cool does this. Yuck. Yeah. This guy's the lamest. Is he going to report to the big boss? And later when you find out that dude is the big boss and he can kick some ass, you're flabbergasted almost. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing that movie did in introducing its villain.
Well,
and also again, great comedy.
Like, it's great comedy, but I think the comedy comes from the fact that he's imbuing that very stock character with a very relatable sense of life, where just like the kids on the bus, like we've all been in a public place and seen some asshole teenagers or 20 somethings doing some dumb shit. Like we've all been at a club or on a beach or in some public venue and seen like an old creeper exactly like that guy trying to mac on some young chicks. And like it does so much heavy lifting to just, like Ed said, tweak that guy to turn him into somebody that we already have this innate hatred of just from our lived experience. And it's cross-cultural. It's like everybody immediately is like, oh yeah, that's like the 55-year-old guy who'd be like hitting on the cocktail waitress at a club. You just know that's who he is because they play into it. Yeah.
And from the get-go of you meeting him, he just walks across the street with he commits a vehicular like felony basically, and then gets out of the car and goes across the street against traffic. It's like, I will not be deterred. I will not be stopped. No, everything must yield to me. Every force in the universe yields to me. I don't give a damn about my if you hit me, the wrath of the universe would come down to you. Nothing would let you hit me. Your God is helping you to not hit me with your car. That's how powerful I am. You don't want me to come down on you.
I love that the juxtaposition with the character is also that he doesn't really want to be the big boss. Like he wants to be a singer. Like that's what he really wants. So he's doing it because he's got the power to do whatever he wants. So he's doing the singing part, but he also has to be the big boss in order to continue doing the singing. So then he has to show that he's the big boss in that one situation. I mean, like, it's just like a cool, it really shows that like the writer really thought about each character in this and their motivations and why they're doing what they're doing. And that's just makes everything a little bit better.
Yeah, and I'd like to say from this point on, I think we're gonna go full spoilers. I'm sorry, I can't take it. It's 22 minutes in, we're going full spoilers. The thing that really rocked my world about Yulian's character is he's talking to his buddy Pavel and he's telling him this whole thing about the money. I wish I could just like speed up this process and get out from under me. It's an eternity holding on to this money for the Russian mob. And he casually but stridently grabs a chair and keeps walking down the hospital hallway. And then we just pan inside this door of this room full of sick guys, and a guy looks up and gets hit in the face with that chair because homeboy threw it. And it's like, that's how we enter the scene. And he's like, who did this? And they tell him it's one man. And at the end of that scene, they find out, somebody holds up homeboy's Metro card and they're like, wow, we need to go get this guy that does this particular route in the Metro card. And now we know that our guy is gotten. They're going to get our guy. And it cuts to like from that to like lasagna that he made himself for his family. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so, it's like so almost Alan Moore-ian, and it's direct cuts from abject danger to illusion of safety to now we out of this tension while they're eating lasagna. We're like, the Russians are coming, dude. What are you doing? Eat lasagna. It's just really beautiful.
Again, it's economical in the way it uses time. We talked about the beginning and that weird sort of clockwork montage that just immediately puts you in the headspace of, oh, I get this guy's mundane sort of soul-killing life. And then, yeah, Ed, to that point, it's like, you don't need anything else to happen. You can go straight from, oh, we know who the guy is, let's go kill him, to the family sitting around the table waiting for dinner. And, the thing that you gain by not having some extraneous scene where the head mobster talks to his buddy or the husband has a private moment with his wife before they sit down with the kids, when you get rid of all that BS, it forces you to keep the rest of the movie going as well. And so it gives it this sense of forward momentum that I feel like in a movie like this is just invaluable, because you're only writing the necessary scenes, which I feel like every screenwriter should take to heart. But certainly in this era where like TV writers are the most celebrated, who are also the most egregious about this, you just don't see it a lot. You don't see that strategy of, you know what, I'm only going to write the really important scenes. And again, I just love it. I love it so much.
So I think that I think a movie like this is one of those type of movies where you go to a few people go to this movie, the people who went to it, let's say, and then they go, dude, I've got to tell everybody to go to this movie. And then in normal circumstances, you'll see the first maybe few weeks be like, okay. And then all of a sudden, it's just going to get a ton of people because it's going to get word of mouth because it's that kind of good. Like, I don't think they even did the service when they were promoting it with the previews because you get an idea of what it might be about. But when you really go and watch it, you're like, oh, this is interesting. Like, and I think and fun too, like fun, super fun. You could go in there, not notice any of the metaphors, any of the in-depth emotional like work, or get the idea that the character is just trying to find a way to live again and still have a great time. Even if you didn't look at any of that stuff, you would still go watch that movie and have a fantastic time. So I think this is one of those ones that would have been a word of mouth and started off maybe slow and then got into like a 95 or 100 mil type of thing.
I mean, are you going to tell me that a healthy America doesn't respond to the story of like a blue collar family man kicking the shit out of douchebags? I mean, that's essentially what this movie is.
It 100% is.
Well, and also, I just want to get to this section of the movie too. Just the beautiful choices in like, okay, we got Nina Simone singing, I'm just a soul whose intentions are good over the opening scene of him doing some peculiar behaviors, and we're gonna loop back to how and why he has this and that in his jacket and his pockets and this and that, and why he's in the police precinct or whatever. In the beginning, it's like, don't let me be misunderstood. Like, I'm just a good guy. I got beat up. I got a story to tell about how I got here. By the time the movie loops back around, it's like, don't let me be misunderstood. I will fuck you up. I will fuck up everybody in this whole precinct and jump out a window and land on a moving car and be fine. Because I'm me. I'm that dude that does that. So I don't give a fuck. I don't even give a fuck that I'm handcuffed. 2 reels ago, you saw me bust out some handcuffs. I don't give a fuck about any of this precarious situation you have me in. Eventually, somebody's going to call you and tell you not to fuck with me. I'm in no danger at all. So please don't let that be misunderstood. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. The song choices in this movie, I just got to go off on a mini rant here. When he steals that punk motherfucker's car and he's driving it and he's driving that Challenger and he's against all the guys and all the guys are shooting at him and it's just the worst situation you've ever seen in your life. Fucking Heartbreaker by Pat Benatar is playing, and the lyrics are talking about you're the right kind of sinner to release my inner fantasies, the invincible winner, you know that you were born to be, as he's shooting Russians in their faces and pulling 180s in his fucking supercar, and as he's pulling up to the place that he owns, that he's kitted out with all kind of weapons so he can kick more ass. That's what's playing, Heartbreaker, and it's beautiful. Beautiful song choices throughout the whole movie.
Well, and the choice of stealing that car is excellent too.
Oh, we got to go back to that. We got to go back to the introduction of that car. We got to go back to the introduction of that car. That was the best.
That was so good.
Oh, that was the best.
Oh.
His neighbor is just shows up in his car, in this nice car. He's like, "Oh, I heard about your troubles last night or whatever. Wish they would have come over here. I could have used some exercise." And he's like throwing punches. And then he's like, "Oh, it's a nice car. Where'd you get it?" It's like, "Oh, my dad died." Oh, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss." He's like, fuck him. I mean, basically. and then he's like, "I'm about to find out how fast it is," or something along those lines. But then they bring it back. They did a callback. That this made me. I for a second thought that Bob Odenkirk wrote this before I saw who actually wrote it, because the comedy is like calls back on itself. It connects everything. It seems like a comedian wrote this in some ways, or at least helped with some of it in some ways.
I'm pretty sure Odenkirk produced the movie, so he definitely had a hand in it.
Yeah. There is so much well-placed humor, so many moments of us cutting to something to emphasize what's going on. Like when he's on the bus choking that guy, and it's like stop requested, over and over.
Yeah.
Like all types of shit. And the director of this movie, damn, I'm gonna butcher his name. He's a Russian guy. He directed Hardcore Henry. That guy kicks some damn ass, dude. Yeah, the director's name is Ilya Naishuler. and he directed Hardcore Henry, which I really didn't give a shot. Honestly, I gave it real short shrift. But that dude can direct, and he's very good at holding on shots long enough for you to see what carnage could play out in the next shot, or for you to register the damage of whatever blow has been struck or whatever. He's really, really good at directing that type of action. This movie, as Bill said earlier, has 0% fat, zero, and it's always doing something that's important. It's always when he goes to see his old dad, we learn a bunch of stuff in a 2-minute scene of it with his old dad.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Every single if he's talking to somebody, it's important. And I just want to take some time real quick to differentiate this from a lot of the shit that it's compared to, because this is not Death Wish. Death Wish is a guy who draws like comics or something, and then something happens to his wife and him, and he becomes a vigilante. He starts shooting people like Bernie Getz on the train. It has nothing to do with some reaction to crime. That's not what this movie is at all. All. It's about the reaction to almost like forces in the universe, right? He's a force in the universe, and the Russians are too.
Well, I was going to say, you know what it is, and I don't know if any of the listeners will get this, but I know that at least Ed, you will, because we've talked about it so much. It's Douche Puncher. I've had this character that I've wanted to work with for a while, and the whole premise is just he punches the shit out of people who do like who are douchebags. And like I know that that's a weird distillation of a story that feels so much more worthy than that, but it kind of is. Like this has nothing to do, like the fact that the villains in this movie are Russian mobsters is almost incidental. I think I said that before. The real crime is that they're assholes. And like, It's very much about, this is a guy who just wants to keep his head down and do his job and love his wife and kids. But you know what? The world is too fucked up for that. And so he does it is such a blue collar Americana thing. Like he's not out for revenge. He's just out to put assholes in their place. And I don't know. It's such a smart way to approach a movie like this, to do exactly what you're talking about, Ed, to sidestep all of the weird, like eyebrow raising, oh, lone nut going out and killing a bunch of guys, huh? Like it just doesn't do that.
No, and also it just, to me, it wakes up this sort of you notice we learn more and more about him as more and more violence happens, because he has to be more and more honest with himself as to why all this happened. And there is some nod that he constantly wants more of it to even happen. The way that he confronts the bad guy, we're not going to get into the exact specifics, because I don't want to spoil the whole damn movie for people who like got this far and didn't, whatever. But the bottom line is, the way that he engineers the situation between him and the villain is just, he's not giving that guy a choice, really. He's more or less saying, come try to kill me, you won't be able to, and I'm gonna kill you. And the last things last, I always bring up my main man, the Punisher. And when movies like this come out, it's like, you can't see, like, I understand the cops and everybody, I understand all the bad shit and the association with the Punisher, but just, this is kind of this like, hey, I tried to be good. I put all of this, and I put millions of dollars of training on the shelf to punch numbers and do Excel spreadsheets in a place. And then one day they just kind of kicked me back out, and I kind of did a little adventure on the wild side. And then I kind of got in over my head. Yuck, yuck. Guess I had to kill a bunch of guys. It's this, you know what I mean? He starts the boulder that makes the snowball that he eventually gets engulfed in. He starts it, and he keeps it going throughout the movie. I think that's pretty clear.
And I think structurally the movie does smart stuff where I mentioned this before, but it doesn't let him just get away with it. Like as fun and as frenetic and as amazing to watch as all this stuff is, the movie is not a place, it doesn't posit a world where like people just sort of brush their hands together and that's it. Because at the midpoint of the movie, he is just taken out that bus full of douches. And it feels very cathartic, but the rest of the movie is about how, like, you don't do something like that and just get away with it. And so he's got the whole Russian mob after him, he's got the police after him. And even though and then it brings us to the end, even though he wins, he's arrested. And you know what? He's not going to stay in jail, but getting out of jail means that he's back in. And so he's back into whatever shit he came from, which the movie never makes explicit, but he's now back on their active duty, whatever that means. And I would bet that if they are lucky enough to get a sequel, they would very much get into how being back is probably not what's best for this character. And I think even in this movie, as much as like his soul wants to be doing this shit, I think they, again, very smartly always made clear, like, this was never the path that was right for him in a lot of ways. And so that internal conflict, I think, drives the whole movie. It's like he's freeing the beast. He's reconnecting to this piece of himself that he put aside, but there is a snowball of consequences that come with doing that, and they're not even unraveled by the time he hits the end of this movie.
Yeah. He's definitely back in, and he's definitely a person who now has to again reinvent themselves. He even says to his wife after all the action, he goes, I thanks for giving me a chance to pretend I was somebody else. If you give me another shot, I'll do my best at it again. So it's almost saying that, like, I'll pretend to be somebody else again if you want me to, but I am pretending. That isn't me. And eventually the shit house is gonna come down because I just gotta kick some ass. I'm just an ass kicking magnet. You know what I mean?
I thought the wife character, who was underwritten, let's be real, but she also was an interesting character in so much as, like, number one, you could tell that she knew exactly where he came from. She knew exactly what he was giving up. And maybe she wasn't okay with that either. Like, it's very much intimated that part of their problem, this distance between them, is because she wasn't really okay with the bargain of him, pushing all of that about himself down and not letting it out. And so I think when you get to the end of this movie and it's them buying the new house and you realize, like, oh, she stayed with him and they are going to make it work. To your point, Ed, there's this understanding that, like, it's being done with a whole new level of honesty that just changes the status quo completely for them, even if it looks the same as where they started to begin with.
Yeah. And here's a question for you guys. Do you think it's going to be connected to John Wick?
I kind of hope not.
Okay.
I feel like the John Wick world, tonally, they're actually very different movies, in my opinion. Not just because one's a comedy and one's like hardcore thriller, but the John Wick movies feel so like Teutonic, right? I mean, it is mythological. It's a gods and monsters type of vibe. And, right down to the fact that there's like king of the homeless people who secretly runs New York City from his throne. Like, that is an arch world. I think this world obviously has like some, unknown powerful forces swirling underneath it, but it also benefits from being a little bit more of a grounded reality, being a little bit more of a world where, like, a dude makes bad lasagna in his tract house and, like, it doesn't have to worry about the man from the high table who's been ordered by a guy in the deserts of the Sahara to, like, come and rappel down off of a helicopter. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a dude in his tract house and some other dudes from the club who are going to come and light it on fire. And, like, I like the simplicity of that.
Okay. I mean, they hinted at a couple of things. With the one, he has at the tattoo shop when the old guy sees whatever tattoos on his finger of the 7 and 8 of spades, it looked like, or 7, 8 cards.
It's deuce 7, and I or 7 deuce, and I investigated that. It's 7 deuce offsuit in poker is the worst hand you could have, as you know,
Yes.
Ron.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm just trying to show off my poker knowledge for you.
Nice.
And yeah, so 7 deuce is a trash hand. So if
Yep.
you have 7 deuce in your hand, you know, due to that tattoo on Odekirk's wrist, that means you have the shittiest hand at all times. Well, what are you gonna do? Be a little bitch about it, or kick the shit out of 75 Russians? You know what I mean? Like, it's, you got the shittiest hand. So what? You are bad enough to bluff your way out. You're bad enough to kick your way out of having that horrible hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the old guy sees it and just goes and locks himself in there. Thank you for your service. And then disappears, looks out the window and closes the shutter. Good luck.
Well, and let's talk about some of that John Wick stuff, though. Do you think that's I know you're saying that that's cool. I'm saying that's cool. Some people are saying that like stuff like that is not cool. I'm like, that's cool. That's unequivocally cool. That's the way to show that world. Other people reacting to the heroes, something about the hero.
Yeah, now we know how dangerous he is.
Well, and again, also I think that it's unequivocally different than John Wick, where John Wick has like secret societies with their own currency and their own internet and like all this nonsense. Where in this, I totally just buy it as like, that's essentially a black ops unit in the military. And if you're a guy who was special forces or was Navy SEAL or whoever, you know, that tattoo artist was, he probably knew about it, even if he's never met one of those guys. So you see the Deuce 7 tattoo, especially being a tattoo artist in a seedy part of town, and you're like, oh, I know exactly what that means. Nope. You know what I mean? Like it's no different than just recognizing at a bar that the guy who's about to pick a fight with you, you know, was a Green Beret. And you're just like, nope,
not
that's
gonna
all
do that.
it was. Yeah, exactly.
So you're about to be that other guy in Con Air.
Absolutely. And then the other part of that was the when they're trying to get information on who he is, and she blackmails a guy at the CIA who goes and sends her all the information, and then she's like, nope, need to pay me, throws the pictures and then disappears.
Again, that's just that amazing sort of cinematic screenwriting shorthand where it's like perfect. Like we don't need to get the scene where, you know, we're in tight close-ups as all the bad guys are sitting around a table underlit with their scotches talking about who is this guy? Where does he come from? You know, all you need is like, open the file. Nope. Throw it down. Okay, I'm out of here.
Yep.
And I love as the movie progresses, he keeps trying to tell his origin story, but people keep dying on him. And I also look, there's some part of me, this is getting real esoteric about this movie. So I hope that the people who like this movie like this conversation, because it's about to get really esoteric. I like how often dudes were alive, but too fucked up to do anything after they fucked with nobody. You know what I mean? They were alive and like blinking and stuff, but they were zero threat. This guy has 5 guns strapped to him, probably. Both of his arms are broken. His throat is slit, and he's barely alive, so he's not going to do anything. You know what I mean? And he stacked them up together as like a tribunal to like listen to him tell his tale, and for him to like burn him up in his basement so this wouldn't be connected to him and stuff. I'm just like, that's morbid, man. Like he's such a machine that he can fuck you up to the point of uselessness. Instead of just death. I don't know, that dawned on me as a really big thing in this movie, how often dudes were just sort of left around until he decided to dispose of them. It's kind of creepy.
I kind of always appreciate a movie though that you know, we talk about this a lot with superhero movies where it's always annoying that it's like, oh, you punch a guy twice and now you just don't have to worry about him ever again. He just, he falls, he's passed out somewhere, the camera pans away and like, might as well not even been there. I like a movie that gets into the reality of like, well, if you beat the shit out of a guy and you don't kill him, the guy's still there. And like, whether he's going to end up in the hospital in traction or whether you're going to have to burn him alive, like you got to figure out what you're going to do with that guy. And again, it's just introducing it's fresh in how little we see it, even though it's a realistic piece of screenwriting. And so I think anytime you can identify something like that, like, oh, the entire audience is going to get this, but they also very seldom see it. Like that's always a thing to run toward when you're writing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of complaints. I don't want to see RZA in anything ever again. He is slow moving. He delivers everything badly. I just don't like it. I don't want RZA to be in anything. I'm sorry, RZA. I'm sure you are, one of the top 10 rappers of all time. I'm 100% sure of that. That being said, you're a very slow martial artist, maybe a good one. I don't know, but you're very slow, and I'd like you to stop it.
Seriously, you want me to stop it? Seriously.
Christopher Lloyd was hilarious. Is it Christopher Lloyd? Did I say it right? Doc Brown?
Yep.
That was hilarious. Those are the couple of things, though, that I was like, okay, well, this has gotten a little bit goofy, was when Christopher Lloyd and RZA show up.
Mm-hmm.
That part was literally the only thing where I was like, I don't know. I mean, I get it because he needed some teammates in the situation. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm just like, okay. Christopher Lloyd is 99 years old.
Are you serious?
I actually am not. I don't know how old he is. He's really, really old.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I loved the character and I loved his scenes. But then when he showed up and we were supposed to buy him as being able to like cat and mouse all these guys, that's when I was like, okay. He just can't sell the physicality.
Yeah, well, especially because everything was so grounded in every other scene in the entire movie that when you put this, and look, it was hilarious. I'm not saying it wasn't. I just also a little ridiculous.
Well, I'll go ahead.
Well, no, I just wanted to say one of the props I will give it, for as ridiculous as that third act was, I loved the fact that they didn't do the sort of obligatory, cheesy action movie thing of like, all right, now that his brother and his father are there, one of those guys is either going to die or be held hostage, and we're going to turn it into a big moment where it's like, okay, he just mowed through 20 guys with machine guns, but now that there's a knife to this guy's neck, we're going to have to feel like, oh, this is where the suspense starts. Like they just threw that completely out the window, even though RZA gets shot. And it's like, even that is sort of treated as like, okay, it happened. We're going to move on. I love the sort of anti-tension that went into that last scene. Because again, like we talked about, the real struggle was about him reconnecting to his true self. So it almost was like that whole last scene was almost the denouement of the movie. It was almost like just the obligatory catharsis, the release of like, oh, now we're just going to luxuriate in this guy achieving the thing that we wanted to see him achieve. And so I loved that they didn't play it as being, overly dramatic or overly tense, because it didn't need to be. That wasn't the story they were telling.
Yeah, I think that's for me, I did feel the tug of, like I'm getting tugged out of the movie. I'm getting tugged away from it. Oh God. Yeah. I felt that, but then I sort of leaned back in when I just was like luxuriating in some of the kills. I'm sorry, like some of the kills are so awesome. Like when RZA puts that guy in a fucking like in a bunch of like barbed wire, like a big barbed wire trap, and slings him out into the warehouse. I was like, okay,
What was the line? What was the line?
He said,
"It was some terrible
this is your
line.
captain. This is your captain speaking. Prepare for takeoff," or some shit like that.
Yeah, that was horrible. That line was bad. I'm sorry. This movie is it is 99% perfect, but that line, I was like, no. And look, I don't know if anybody could have done it better than RZA. Like, what, we're gonna have Michael J. White say the same thing? I don't know. Neither one of them. I don't know who. At least Michael J. White would have been fast.
There would have
but
been.
Then we would have had to see a 22-minute fight scene where he punches 47 dudes really quick.
Well, there would be more kicks and stuff, and
he's awesome.
But so all I'm saying is, it's one of the cases where you jump the shark and then you hydroplane over to another platform you weren't even aiming on, and then you like park your bike and you won. That's what I think the movie did. It did jump the shark in the middle of those scenes, and then it just landed on something better than if at the end he's all bloody and he's repentant and he's ready to go back to his life, which a lot of punk ass movies would have him do. A lot, and in the end of a lot of punk ass movies, I read a bunch of reviews of this movie. There were so many. Man, I feel right wing when I feel like talking about some of the critics that didn't like this movie. Like, I just feel like, where's your fucking sense of any of that pent up aggression that is there? Even in modern life, we've changed it from caveman, stuff to our regular aggression, our aggressive communication, our aggressive lives. But there is a bottom line of aggression inside of us that this sort of cathartic filmmaking does something to ease, and to reject it and lump it in with crap like Death Wish and stuff, and to pretend that it's just another orgy of violence perpetuating some patriarchy or some bullshit you got in your head. God damn, that's just like the wrong tack for this movie. This is kind of, to Bill's point earlier, it is about, there are people who are too powerful to get punched in the nose, and some of them need a good punch in the nose. Who's going to do it? It's almost like a real life version of Spider-Man. Every time I don't punch these douches, people get hurt. You know what I mean? That Odenkirk can think that in his head as a morality system. So that's all I'm saying. I mean, I don't want to throw this type of movie to the winds and act like it's not important or always marginalize this, or I don't know, to say that this movie is whack now because it has good old fashioned ultra violence. Look at how it's packaged. Look at the beautiful choices throughout the entire movie, including casting RZA. Fuck you, Ron.
I'll just say that I think I'm 100% sympathetic to the sort of knee-jerk rejection of any sort of like violence as catharsis movies. I really am. I get all those arguments. It's really easy to do movies like that wrong. And it's really easy to put the wrong messages into movies like that, or to take away the wrong messages, even if they're not specifically put in there.
Mm-hmm.
I just think this movie avoids all the potholes on that road. And I guess that's one of the reasons why I was so energized and sort of invigorated walking out of it, is I just felt like this is this type of movie specifically made for me, the type of guy who is very quick to take these types of movies to task. You know, I am not a Death Wish guy, Dirty Harry guy. I've never liked The Punisher. I'm right there at the front of the line to talk about some of the problematic parts of Fight Club, even though I think it was all done satirically. This movie just goddamn nails it for me. So if you want to see like the platonic ideal of that type of movie, according to me, go see Nobody, because damn, is it good.
And I want to kind of talk about what you guys were just talking about in a little bit of a story thing. So I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, tons of Native Americans. And one of the things that Native Americans in Albuquerque at least liked was heavy metal. They loved Slayer, they loved Anthrax, they loved Metallica, Megadeth, all that stuff. And when you're talking with them, you know, they're pretty positive people, and you're like, oh, why are you so into this metal stuff? And it's like, well, because deep down I'm angry about stuff, and these guys get all this anger out for me. So when I'm listening to them, it's cathartic. It's the thing that helps me get how I'm feeling out. And when I was at Slayer at the Big Four, there was in the Empire Polo Grounds, Slayer comes on stage, and there are two dudes, Native American guys, tattoos all over them of like demons and crazy looking stuff on their body. And then as soon as Slayer shows up, they just started hugging each other, and they were crying because they didn't know they were going to get to see Slayer again, because the last time was supposed to be the last time, and this was the really last time. And so it's just one of those things where, to me, movies like this are the type of thing where you go, we, just like Bill said earlier, we've always wanted to punch some guy who's hitting on a chick on the bus, and you're wearing your headphones just trying to stay out of trouble and try to keep focused. But there's a part of you that wants to be the guy who stands up against douchebags and like stops them from being douchebags. And this is just an exponential version of that has great fight scenes, that has a cool story and amazing pacing at the same time. So like, That's what I say to you people out there who don't get the idea that we all have some kind of anger dwelling into our bellies. Get it together and admit your anger.
But and also like it's just it's also one last yearning that it really satisfies is there are people, millions of them across this great nation right now in 7-Eleven and Walmart parking lots, Citgo, Conoco, and they're about to get into a fight and they're going to say the classic words, "You don't know me. You don't know me." And 9 times out of 10 amongst these millions of people, it doesn't mean anything. Bob Odenkirk in this movie could reasonably at any point go, "You don't know me," and have it really mean something. Have it really mean that you don't understand the trouble you're in. You don't understand the monumental events that you set forth if you fuck with me or if I fuck with you. I love that, and I love that nobody is the embodiment of "you don't know me. You don't know enough about me to make some accurate assessment as to whether you can kick my ass." And it's a real metaphor for a lot of people's lives. You don't know shit about most of the people that you meet. You know less than nothing. Them being a hyper assassin for the 3-letter agencies might be the least of your worries about some of the people you think you know. You know what I mean?
Well, which even in and of itself is another extension of the movie's theme, which is sort of like, don't be an asshole, right? Because you never know who the other guy on the bus might be. And I think that we've talked so much about sort of the direction and the writing of the movie, but you bring up a good point, Ed, and just singling out Bob Odenkirk, the movie doesn't work without him. I can't
Yeah.
think of another actor that you could even conceivably cast in this role to make it work, you know? And I think that he is a very, very talented performer. I think the fact that he is as much a writer as he is a performer is a great asset in a role like this because he understands the nuance without having a need to perform the nuance. Like he makes sure that it's in there, but it's all so subtle that like it's still a very workmanlike performance, which again the character needs because he's such a straightforward blue collar type of guy. It's just I don't know, man. It's just there's levels of craft going on here that you really don't get in a lot of movies, let alone revenge action movies. So again, it's just everybody's at the top of their game here. Kudos to them. Kudos to whoever thought to bring this to Bob Odenkirk because wow, what a great way to package this script for sure.
Oh, and one more that I totally forgot. Dude, when those guys, the bad guys, are stumbling towards the bus and they're going to get on the bus, and he's like praying for them to get on the bus so he has somebody's ass to kick. I gotta be me. I gotta be me. Dude, that's playing while he's about to receive his gift of some people to beat up on, to pile this pent up rage upon. uh I gotta be me is playing. It's just perfect.
So before we get out of here, though, I want to ask you guys: do you think there's stuff on the cutting room floor that was cut out that you think that could have been in there, but probably would have ruined it? I know that sounds weird, but like there were a
Well,
few
no.
scenes where I'm like, did they cut this off?
Well, no. I think you're probably keenly seeing the like lack of fat. It's like this
Yeah.
motherfucker after it fights for a while, this motherfucker needs to carbo load because it has no fat. You know what I mean? It's a real well-oiled machine. So I definitely get what you're saying. I do believe that whatever is on that floor is for a good reason. And I just maybe wish there was about maybe 180 frames out of that last sequence of them sort of orgiastically bukkake the world with bullets in the warehouse. Maybe they could have cut a few frames out of that because it did start to stray credulity. But other than that, I think you get what you got, and everything was in there for a reason, including the stuff that I just said I wanted to snipped out because they wanted to show you that this is as Bill likes to say, the apotheosis of these characters. This is a family of hunter killer guys doing exactly what they were put on this earth for. That's the point of that scene, and that's why it's so ridiculous to our eyes, but at the same time it is what it is, as he would say in the movie.
And I would say, Ron, too, and this is not a knock on you at all, because I think most people suffer from this. You're watching the movie through CW colored lenses. So,
Yeah.
you're so used to media that does leave too much fat in. You're so used to media where the characters do have to like explicate everything that's happening so that you're not just seeing it. You also know how they feel about everything that's happening. And again, I'm so sick of that. I can't even tell you. So a movie like this is just a breath of fresh air.
Well, just last things last though, about the underwriting of his wife's character. I definitely agree that they should have talked more about any damn thing. But I'm so glad that what they talked about wasn't, you can't get back into the life. Nag, nag, nag. She knows she's with a dude who could like blow their house up with a glance. So like, yeah, excuse me. What do you think you're doing? I'll patch you up. Yep. Not getting in your shit too much. I'll patch up your back. What's going on? You know what I mean? It's not any of that naggy Skylar stuff that all the edgelords hated.
That's so funny. I was going to say they didn't even do the Breaking Bad thing of like having to do a very serious sit down about what is this going to do to the kids. Let's think about the kids.
Yeah, they just covered her eyes.
What's that?
They
just covered her eyes when they walked her out so she didn't have to see the murdered bodies.
100%.
But the son got to. That's the beautiful part of this movie. The son is like, this is the after. My dad is alive after this. And I was mad at him because he wouldn't swing a golf club. Boy, am I an asshole. I love that. That was like the Nakatomi Towers getting saved for me. To see that look on the kid's face, like, my dad is a bad motherfucker. And he kept telling people, I was an auditor. I was a nobody. He keeps telling you who he is, but you're too stupid and you don't have the proper security clearance to know what he's telling you, to know what an auditor means, to know what nobody means. I love it that this person could have so many depths to them and like refuse to show them for the benefit of his family and other people. But then he just kind of can't help it. And like you said, Bill, at the end, there's an equilibrium between who he's going to be now and who he's going to be with his family. And I bet you they have a little bit more sex.
If there's not a better place to end it, I mean, come on.
So thank you guys for listening to The Greatest Pod. Thank you guys for supporting our Patreon. We really love that when you guys tap into there and get extra pods and get art from myself and Ron. So Ron, get us on out of here, baby.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Greatest Pod.